Whenever you turn on a filter that hasn't been off for a while, or what happens is on the inside of any pipe, you're going to build up various cultures of bacteria and so forth that love that environment. Then when you turn your pump off, then that bacteria is designed to basically withstand the flow. Then you turn the pump off, and then that sort of stuffs with the bacteria. Then when you turn it back on again, it blows a lot of it out. So you get this white froth that comes out when you turn on a pump that that you've had off, and that's nothing to worry about. It's just very normal. If you wanted to throw a pipe cleaner through it every now and then, that would help a little bit, but it's pretty much harmless as far as the aquarium's concerned.
How soon before it goes? Like, how long is this going to be in the thing now?
Oh, not long. It'll just sort of disappear very quickly. Now, the next thing is the brown sand. Now, the brown is what's called a diatom algae, and the diatom algae feeds mainly off silicates. Now, you can actually test your silicates, but if you've got brown algae, you can say you've got silicates. So brown algae will come from silicates. Silicates will come from any tap water use, or natural seawater will have an amount of silicates. Now, if you've got a really well-established reef tank with lots of corals and so forth, then the silicates are a food source, and that will just feed stuff that's in the tank. Also, if you've got some good scavenging fish, like lawnmower blennies and abalone and various things, then they'll feed on the diatom anyway. So as your tank gets more established, diatom tends to be less of a concern. And having plenty of things like your stroms that stir the bottom is really good. So in a new tank or a bearer tank, you'll find that the diatom tends to be a lot more of a problem. As the tank gets more well-developed and you start forming coralline algae and so forth, that will actually compete with the diatoms, and then you'll find they won't be such a problem. But the key to getting rid of diatoms, besides don't overlight the tank, is to get your silicate down. So there's lots of media that we have available that will get rid of silicate, and most of your phosphate medias will do it. So if we just reduce our silicate, then eventually we will reduce our diatom. It's really important to understand what we call 1, 2, 3 corals and fish. Now, a 1 fish is basically a fish like a clownfish. It's very easy to look after. You need to pretty much do something wrong to kill this fish. Now, I am confident that if you kill this fish and you bring me a sample of water in a video, I am confident that I will work out why the fish died, and I will be able to fix it so it won't happen again. Now, if you have a number 2 fish, maybe something like a blue tang, then some blue tangs are hardy and tough and really resilient fish. Others just seem to die very easily. Then a number 3 fish means that most of the time they die very easily. So if you go and get a Moorish idol or some of your butterfly species, they're hard to keep. So if you find that you buy them and they die, then don't be surprised because you went and bought a challenging fish. If I have trouble keeping it, then maybe you shouldn't be buying it. Same with the coral. When you come in to buy coral, you want to bring us a video of your system, you want to bring us a sample of water, and then you want to ask for number 1 corals for your tank. And this particular aquarium, if you go for very easy corals, if you go for zoanthus and soft corals and things that are easy, then once again, if something goes wrong, then the chances are, if you bring me a sample of water in a video, I can tell you exactly why it happened, and I can tell you how to make sure it doesn't happen again. But then if you get harder to keep corals like gonioporas and so forth, maybe they are going to die because maybe your environment really isn't set up for them. Then if you go for a number 3, then if it dies, well, don't be surprised because it's much better to go for easy to keep animals and get your confidence up than start trying to keep animals that even we have trouble keeping. This food is probiotics from New Life Spectrum, which is probably my favorite food. And when you feed the fish, I'd like this to be the main food that I feed. I also really like Danichi color, but breaking it up with a bit of frozen food is something that I'm very much a fan of as well. And then when I feed my fish, I want to make sure that all the food is eaten in about 30 seconds. I never follow the instructions on the food because I always tell you to feed too much. And then I will look at the belly of the fish over time. And if I notice they're getting thin, then whatever you're doing, you have to increase it. And if I notice they're getting fat, then whatever you're doing, you just have to decrease it. So you just watch the belly over months and make sure you don't feed too much, because if you feed too much, you get extra waste. But this is the food I love because it's a cold extruded food, so you're actually getting the vitamins, and it's got the probiotic bacteria in it, which means when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo. So it's really clean compared to most other foods. Okay, so these test results, the KH is 7, so I'd like to raise that up a little bit. The pH is 7.8, so I definitely want to raise that up a little bit. I want the pH more like 8.4, and I want the KH more like 8. Now there is a bit of phosphate in the water, which is 1.4. I'd like to get that down. That would be adding to our algae. And then our calcium is 550, so so that's a little bit on the high side. Would rather it be about 450. Then our magnesium is at 1,000. I'd much rather that more like 1,400. And then there's a tiny bit of ammonia and nitrite, which I'm probably going to say is probably a misreading. And then you've got a little bit of nitrate, so an extra water change would definitely be a good idea. The thing I really like doing is reviewing the aquarium stuff that's on hand. So in this case, we have a magnesium supplement, which I'm very happy to hear because currently the magnesium level is a little bit low. So I'd like that to be added daily until the level's correct. And then the idea would be to add it weekly. The magnesium test is going to check if that level's right. We've got some probiotic food, which I'm very happy with because I love that food. We've got some alkalinity, which I would also like to be added daily until the level's right. And then you can go to weekly. Then we've got some organic carbon. This stuff's great, but it really needs to be dosed daily. So when you start getting onto this stuff, you end up wanting a dosing pump. And what happens with a dosing pump is you can sort of stick it up underneath there. It's got a little controller on it, and then it will actually measure and disperse for you the nutrients every day. Now, the big advantage of that is you'll find with your aquarium, you go through phases where you're actually really good with it, and you are actually doing what you need to do. And during that phase, let's call that a few months, often you can get your input and your output levels correct. What I mean by that is the tank produces an amount of nitrate and phosphate, and it consumes calcium, carbonate, magnesium. So therefore, you can slowly change the setting on the dosing pump until you get your inputs and outputs correct. So it might take a few months to just get that right, but then once it is right, then you've got a few months of grace. Over time, it will definitely change, because as you get more corals, then you'll find your absorption level is higher, so therefore you will have to alter your tests, your dosing pump according to the tests. So I'm a big fan of that. Now here we've got some biological products. They're great at the start of the tank, and I do prefer they go in the fridge once they're open. It's winter here in Sydney, so I'm not really worried about it at all. But they don't tend to respond well to heat. So dose them until they're finished. In a new aquarium like this, really we're only worried about the major things. We're worried about the pH, the salt level, and the temperature. Now, temperature is something we're going to need to be aware of here. If there's not a chiller, then depending on how warm this house gets, what we don't want to do is go put really sensitive corals into this tank and then find that this room is super hot. So going a summer without getting excited about coral wouldn't be a bad idea. Otherwise, there is various things that we may need to consider, which is where we can place a chiller, or we can put some fans that actually blow over the top of the tank. So in winter, keeping the tank warm is very easy because the heaters are very, very reliable. In summer, we need to cool the tank, which is a little bit more difficult. So it will just determine how warm your room is. Now, the other thing that is good to be aware of over time is what's called ICP tests. So in a situation like this, I would not bother testing ICP. On the other hand, as the tank gets more established and as you start getting more corals, then what the ICP test does is allow you to test all your trace and minor elements. And once you've got all your main stuff right, that's like fine tuning. And that's really the difference between a reef tank that goes good and a reef tank that goes amazing. So you send away an ICP test to Triton, and then they give you a printout of all of your readouts, and it's lots of laboratory tests that we don't have access to. And Triton gives you suggestions on what's too high, what's too low, and how to fix it. Now, these sorts of magnet cleaners are actually very convenient for cleaning your tank. But the thing is, if you go and get gravel caught underneath it, and then that gets caught underneath here, and you go like this, you just scratch the crap out of your aquarium. That's why I really love the flipper, because the flipper uses a razor blade, and it doesn't actually do that. So I'd rather have a flipper than one of these.